On this week's episode of the Players Experience podcast, we talk to a great equipment manager with the Edmonton Oilers, Barrie Stafford, on his work with the Oilers, what it was like to work with the team for so many years, what it was like to work with the iconic Joey Moss in Edmonton as well, and what it was like to be part of the NHL, the Olympics, the World Cups, and so many more, as well as working in the NHL alumni group after his career behind the bench. Before we bring Barrie onto the show, just want to remind you guys, hit up the subscribe button so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And also to make sure to check out our production team, Jay Solti Photography, on Instagram, and check out their work because they do fantastic work for the show each and every week. And also, guys, we have discount codes with Hush Blankets, the Jaywalk, and Great North Apparel. So make sure to use the Players Experience code during your checkout to get some discounts on those products as well. The Players Experience podcast is coming up next. All right, Barrie, how's it going, man?
Oh, fantastic. Couldn't be better.
Good. I heard it's cold out your way. It's a little bit warmer my way right now, but hey, I mean, we'll take the weather as it comes, you know?
Well, if people live in Edmonton like we do, actually I live out southeast on an acreage, basically on a farm. So I'm not really in the city, but you have to, if you live in this part of the world, you have to enjoy the wintertime, and we do enjoy the wintertime. So it's, you know what, you just have to dress warm.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you for taking the time to be on the show. I like to start off every show with a rapid fire segment. So I'm going to fire 4 questions off at you, and just the first thing that comes to your mind. Favorite time of day?
I'd have to say early in the morning when I get up. I'm an old bastard now, so I get up early and get a good start in the day.
Now, what's the strangest thing in your fridge?
Strangest thing? Well, I got a new border collie, a COVID puppy, and I put puppy treats in a tray that says Alfred's food. That's probably the strangest thing.
What about a TV show that you're currently watching?
Yellowstone.
Oh,
love it.
Again,
yeah,
my friends are all for Yellowstone right now.
I love it.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Favorite sport outside of hockey?
Well, good thing you didn't say favorite sport that I'm good at outside of hockey, but I love playing golf. Some of my friends asked me not too long ago if I like golf, and I said, well, if you consider smoking cigars and looking for balls, golf, that's my sport. I love golf.
Hey, I'm with you. Drinking a few beers on the side as well, you know?
You got it.
When COVID ends, I'll make my way out to Edmonton. We'll hit up the links a few times.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, I like to pick my buddies and hang out with people that I know and like, and we have a great time.
That's fantastic. Now, I want to chat about your career in sport and your historic tenure, if you will, with the Edmonton Oilers. You spent 38 years with the Oilers, which is tremendous, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Olympics, about the World Cups, and everything. How did you know you wanted to work in sport?
Well, I was probably like every other young Canadian kid when I was a little guy growing up. I grew up in Banff, so I was lucky to ski and play hockey. It's a great place to grow up, and I still consider Banff to be home. But as I grew up and grew older, I went more the hockey route, and I loved hockey, and I wanted to be an NHL player, just like every kid growing up that loves hockey. And it didn't take long. I had a bit of a scattered junior career. Played a few years junior, and then I went a strange route. I went and played minor league pro hockey in Amarillo, Texas, of all places, when I was about 17, 18 years old. And then I realized that I wasn't going to be a hockey player. I couldn't make a living at it, and I joined the University of Alberta Golden Bears. I was lucky enough to make the Golden Bears team and was coached by the hockey's greatest coach, amateur coach, Claire Drake. So we won 3 championships out of 4 those years. And so I studied athletic training. Sports was always a big part of my life. And I grew up in Banff, as I said, and the person that was probably one of the most positive influences in my life was Glenn Sather. He ran a hockey school called the Glenn Sather Holiday Hockey School that I was a student as a kid, and then I eventually ended up working, helping with the kids, and not so much on ice. But so I had built a relationship with Glenn. He knew myself and my family, and he knew I was a hockey guy. And I knew that if I wanted to work in the hockey business, which I did, I would have to get the degree. And so I worked hard, got the medical degree, and as an athletic trainer. And then I applied for the job, and they hired me to go work in Kamloops, actually, in the Western Hockey League. I'm not sure if it was called that at the time, Western Canada League, but the Kamloops Oilers. And in the middle of the summer, I got a call from Glenn. He said, the trainer in Wichita, Kansas, quit. You just got a promotion. You're working in the Central Hockey League. So my first professional job, and the job that I stuck with for all these years, was started in Wichita, Kansas as the trainer.
That's incredible. What a journey. Like, just to get that call, like kind of just like an NHL player too, being like, hey guy, you got a promotion, you're coming on up to the bigger leagues, right?
Yeah, it was pretty scary, actually. I didn't really have a lot of practical experience as a trainer. I put my time in, and I learned the basic techniques like anybody in university. But the real learning was when I got thrown in the fire. That's like any job in any career. I know there was times when I was looking around thinking, man, they never taught me how to do this in university. But you just learn how to roll your sleeves up and get to work and do it. So, yeah, it's I really learned on the job. It was a tough go, but it was trial by fire. That's the way Glenn Sather was. He threw me in there and kind of learned on the job.
No, honestly, that's really the best way. A lot of people may not find it their cup of tea to be taught like that, but that's the best way to learn, because you are able to learn from your mistakes, figure out how to fix things right on the spot. And especially in the world of hockey, we know how hectic it is behind the bench, let alone on the ice, to be able to make decisions quickly. So, that's awesome. Now, you began your working with the Oilers when you were just 25 years old, and you spent the next 38 years with them. What was it like to kind of go from the Central Hockey League up to the NHL and start working with the senior version of the Oilers, if you will?
Well, I do remember halfway through my first season, the trainer, it's coincidentally the person that had been doing the job in Edmonton and run into some health issues. And I had heard that they needed to replace the trainer. Now, this was the equipment manager, not the medical trainer, but because in the NHL there was 2 trainers, an equipment manager and a head medical trainer. But in the minors, there's one guy, so I did both jobs. And I was scared shitless that they were going to call me to come up and work in Edmonton, because even though I had worked a training camp, it was my first professional training camp, and I really did not have a clue what it took to be an NHL trainer. I learned very quickly. I had some great tutorship when I was in the training camp, and I kind of learned the basic fundamentals. But I really did learn on the job, and I was not ready to move up to the NHL at Christmas is when that was going to happen. And thank God they didn't call me. And I finished out the year, and then I got the call right at the end of the year to come up and to work as the head equipment manager.
That's really cool. And what was that experience like for you to kind of like just make it to the NHL? With like those fears of like, okay, at least you have some support of now just kind of focusing on one job or one aspect of it.
Well, I think the one thing that really helped me through my career, there's no doubt. I said I had a bit of a scattered junior career. Well, I was a guy that was very competitive and had a bit of a temper. And those 2 things, I would say maybe more aggressive and had a temper. Those 2 things maybe in hockey they're okay, but they're not good traits to have at a young age because it can get yourself in trouble. But thanks to John Muckler and the fact that I got some experience, I learned that the best way to, and also the fact that I had been on a lot of different junior teams. Like I think I played for 7 teams in 2 years. Just I never quit. I kept trying. That you learn to adapt to new environments and new locker room settings. And so I took that philosophy on when I came in as a trainer to Edmonton. I mean, the Oilers it was 1983, 82-83 season. They were chock full of all-stars like Messier, Gretzky, Coffey, Curry, Grant Fuhr, just to name a few. So I was stepping into basically an all-star team in a role as an all-star team. And I was about the same age as those guys too, right? So the first thing I did when I stepped in is I put my nose down. I went to work. I didn't say boo. And I used to refer to it as the law of the wolf pack. Like you just sit back and learn and don't say too much and just keep your mouth shut until you kind of get your bearings and until you earn the trust, really, basically, of the guys. So I eventually, very luckily at the time, training staff became part of the team, and that's more of the way it was in the early 80s, where you had an equipment manager and a medical trainer, and whoever else was there was part of the team, like with the coaches and the players. So these guys, I just took my time. I did my job, and through, I guess, trust and respect, you earn a position and a place on the team.
That's great. And yeah, I definitely know where you're coming from because I've worked with a men's senior team out here in like just east of Toronto called the Whippy Dunlops of the Allen Cup Hockey League. And I've done media relations for them for the past 5 years now. And obviously I know it's not as great as standing behind the bench, but you still kind of have to earn that trust and that respect so that when I have to interview guys for different segments or chat with them about different things, I can just walk up to them and kind of ask them a question, right? So that trust and respect is everything in hockey, especially how small the hockey world is, really.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. And when you're entering in a team environment, and I had a pretty interesting Zoom not too long ago, just regarding some of the work I did with the building, the new Rogers Place building, and it was Jack Michaels that was on the other end, and he asked me about, how did you find, adapting your job as a project manager, so to speak, compared to the work that you had done in the past as a trainer. And I thought, what, the whole thing is based on team. When you learn and you grow up in a team environment, you learn that the name on the front of the sweater, like the typical cliche, is more important than the name on the back. And you also learn that every team member has a job and a role as a hockey player, of course, within the team of players, but also the staff on the outside as well. Like our training staff we used to call it a team within the team. We'd had started with 3, ended up with probably 5 guys, but everybody has their role and everybody knows and understands their role. And, that's what contributes to the success of a good organization. And so that kind of helped me along too.
And let's chat more about your role with project management and your work also with the NHL alumni group. After you worked behind the bench, you ended up becoming the director of the NHL alumni group, and you became a project manager. How was it for you to be able to work with guys that you kind of grew up with as part of the alumni group now, and also kind of be able to give that input and feedback to help make a better rink?
Well, I'll tell you how the progression went. I left the training in 2010, and I started as a role as the director of new business development, which was I started to learn a little bit about the business of hockey and new business development. Not so much the mainstream hockey, selling tickets, marketing, sales, but exploring new avenues and expanding the organization into, minor league teams and minor league cities, those kind of things. So that was the first big step. Then after that, I started in 2012 as the liaison for Rogers Place. That's when I really hit the project management as far as a career. I mean, I had 4 different careers basically within the almost 40 years. But so I even though I had done minor jobs and minor projects, so I learned at a very high level how to be a project manager. And, luckily I worked with world-class architects and world-class project management company in Icon. HOK was the design team. PCL was the construction company. We were partners with the city of Edmonton. So once again, back to the whole concept of breaking it down into a team. So you just kind of look. We had a bit of a project team that moved around in everybody's category, and mine was hockey. What was it called? Locker room and related. So anything to do with the NHL players from the parking lot up to the press box, basically. Then from there, and once we moved into the building in 2016, I didn't have a job, and I was lucky to fall into a category that Bob Nicholson and Kevin Lowe had decided that, you know what, we have such a great, awesome alumni. We need to formalize the alumni department. We need to have someone lead the alumni department. We need to make it a part of the Oilers organization, and then get it some credibility throughout the National Hockey League. So I started a new department. I was given lots of leeway. They were very supportive. So I learned how to start a department right from scratch, as far as the revenue that's needed, the expenses, and all those kind of things. So technically, I had to learn that. But as to answer your question, that was a long way to get to the answer. But all those experiences that I had from the time that I was a trainer, which was 28 years, and then the 10 years between that, or 6-8 years between that and the time I started with the alumni, because I did that for 3 years before I retired. It was all about building relationships with the players, of course. Project management, I learned about, I still was involved with the current training staff, the coaches, the managers, the strength coaches, all those people that I use for resources. And we use the team atmosphere, the team concept through project management, through new business development. And I use that same kind of concept into the alumni relations department. But, someone said to me one day, I think you auditioned your entire life for this job as the coordinator of the alumni. And the cool thing is, over those 28 years and even beyond that, almost every one of I believe there's 800 plus alumni, came across my desk. Not just the Hall of Famers in the early 80s from 80 to 90, of course, the people that everybody knows, but or that are prominent. But there's a heck of a lot of hockey players go through a locker room in 1 year that maybe come up and down a game or two, and don't really stay or get traded. So I was working with all my friends, people that I knew real well. They knew me, and I had already developed a good relationship with most of the players. And it was a natural progression for me, and it was a very good job, and I really enjoyed it a lot.
Now, talking about the progression of and the relationships that you built with those players, you were honored by the Oilers when you retired in 2012, I believe it was, from behind the bench. Is that correct?
Yeah, I left 2010, and then I left the Oilers, the training staff, and was reallocated. That's the term that they used. I mean, they had made a change. The corporate structure had changed, management had changed, and they wanted to do something different after 28 years. And so, luckily for me, they had a place for me. So I just moved into a different role, and was quite happy with that to learn something new after all those years. But it's kind of like I don't know. I forgot the question anyway. I guess I started rambling there.
No, it's all good. I was saying, I believe it was in 2012, you were honored by the Oilers. Greats like Lowe, like Coffey, like Gretzky, on all the work that you did for them throughout your behind the bench years. And talking about those relationships, like what was it like for you to see the players that you helped succeed. Now, thank you for all your work.
Well, in the training business, the training fraternity, we are fortunate that every year, and I was on the executive board for that group. I mean, it's a very great group of guys, the medical trainers and equipment managers in the National Hockey League. Some of my closest friends. I spent lots of time with those guys in the trenches. The one group is called PHATS, Professional Hockey Athletic Trainers Society, and their partners in the business it's called SOFEM, Society of Professional Hockey Equipment Managers. So there is basically one professional association, and both fall under that group. And that's all NHL, American Hockey League, Central Hockey League. Now we've brought the colleges and universities in, and the junior teams, to learn and to grow your expertise and your credibility in the business. So they are offered every year to put one member into the Hockey Hall of Fame under the category of trainers. So it's a great honor for our members, and that they're recognized within their group and within their peers. But the member that's nominated and put into the Hall of Fame, I was actually inducted in 2012. So that was quite an honor, nothing that you really expect. And you might not say that it's not at the same level as the players and for the Hockey Hall of Fame inductions, and it isn't. But in a relative way, it we are in the Hall of Fame, and we're recognized, and there's plaques in the Hall of Fame, and it's kind of an internal trainers deal, but it's great for the family and that whole thing. But when that happens, because a lot of the former players that I worked with were already inducted into the Hall of Fame, so these guys, if you think back to the 80s and up until, 2012, most of those guys, we all grew up together, even though like I said, we were both the same age. Guys that are Hall of Famers, Mark and Wayne and Kevin and Paul Coffey and Curry and Fuhrer, and a ton of guys that were already in the Hall of Fame. They're the ones that they're friends. And so among other players, but they always, they're very nice in recognizing that as a teammate, that I was inducted. And yeah, it's quite an honor. It's a bit overwhelming actually when all your buddies are calling you and congratulating you. But yeah, that's a long time ago now. I forgot about that.
Well, hey, I'm going to take my turn and congratulate you as well, because without a doubt, being inducted, regardless if you're a player, trainer, you could be the water boy for all I care. Being
yeah.
the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
that is a huge honor. So congratulations, because that's definitely well-deserved after the tenure that you did spend with the Oilers.
Well, I've often said, you got to be good to be lucky and lucky to be good. Like I just happened to come along at the right time. And, 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years. The team had, my first year in the NHL, we went to the final and lost to the Islanders. But, after that, up until 1990, we won. And then it was 16 years 15, 16 years before we went back against Carolina for the 7th final, and we lost to the Hurricanes. But, I just came along at a good time. I was very fortunate. I suppose I learned my craft, and I became very good at what I did. And I learned from the fact that I was working with great players that were demanding in their own right to become better every game. And that's how I learned to help them, because it's not that they were selfish people. They were just so determined to every year, every game to get better and do whatever they could to get better. And that was my job, just to help them to do what it took to get better, to improve their game. And that's basically what the training staff does anyway.
Now, during your time with the Oilers, like you just mentioned, you've been part of 5 Stanley Cup wins and several other playoff contentions. Do you have one win that kind of stands out as your most favorite out of those 5?
Well, that's not a hard question for me. I've been asked that question before, and not to take for granted the fact that, man, I was on a lot of winning teams. I was a very, very lucky guy. But that was a long time ago. But I will tell you, it was, I think, let me just try and remember, May 14th, 1983. It was the 84, May 14th, 1984 was the year that and the date that the Oilers won their first Stanley Cup. And I was in my second year in the NHL, my third year as a professional. I was standing on the bench in the same place I stood for all those years on our home games in my little, 2-foot square spot. And, looking up at the clock and watching the countdown and watching the players, it's something that really, it changes your life. And it was quite spectacular. Just like I said earlier, all those little kids growing up that want to be an NHL player and win the Stanley Cup. Well, I wasn't ever an NHL player or coach, but I was very fortunate to be on a team that won, and that was the most exciting moment of my professional career. I believe is the first Stanley Cup that we had won.
So what I need you to do now is I need you to fly over to Toronto, get hired by the Leafs, and bring that puck to the Leafs to help them win the Stanley Cup, because it has been way too long. But,
yeah, that's the other thing I was saying to Jack the other day is that, out of the 38 years that I was there, we were in the final 7 times, right? 7 times. And so that's 7 out of 38 years. That there's a lot of losing. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean it in, there's a heck of a lot of things that have to go right to win. Mm-hmm. And, it's very challenging today, even more so today than any era. I think to put a winning team together, tough for the managers and the executive of these teams to draft and develop the players. But very, very challenging times. It's so different today than it was when I was working. But it's just I wish I could help the Leafs. I've heard that. Although they are getting better, I know that, but I've heard that whole story about the last Stanley Cup. And I had a lot of good years in Maple Leaf Gardens. I was lucky in the area I grew up, so I spent lots of time in Toronto, and Maple Leaf Gardens was a classic place to be and to work in. And so I'm kind of very well aware of the history of the Leafs too.
Well, hey, we'll welcome you with open arms. Don't worry. Now, I wanted to chat with you about Joey Moss, and I don't think there's a sports person out there that doesn't know who Joey Moss is, especially a Canadian hockey player or hockey insider that knows who Joey Moss is. And I want to chat about your relationship with Joey. Obviously, Joey was such an iconic piece of the Oilers organization throughout his years with the team, and he just passed away last year. What was your relationship and your work kind of environment with Joey, and what was it like to work with him?
Wow, it was a tough goal here for us when we lost Joey. He was a very special person in our professional lives, but also in my case and in some of our staff's personal life, some of our players as well, personal lives. When Joe started, and I believe it was 84, 85, when Wayne brought him, the information and the story is fairly well known that Wayne brought Joey in, and I don't want to get into that whole side, but that's how he ended up coming. And he was just a staff member. He was a member of our staff, and immediately, whether he had Down syndrome or not Down syndrome, I'd never spent much time with anybody with Down syndrome. So we really learned an awful lot about it, and never ever considered it to be a disability. It was Joey, right? So, but I'll tell you, he became a real integral part of our team within a short amount of time because he was such a smart little guy and funny. Oh my God, he had us laughing, and I've often said if you were to ask me what is my how can I describe Joe Moss, and it's like I said, still sentimental to me, but I say that this little guy just brought joy to people's hearts. He was a happy guy. He was a big part of our team. He got along great with all the staff and the players. He had a very responsible position, but he just kept us laughing. Man, he was a funny guy, and he became very close to the staff. Sparky, my partner there that I worked with for a lot of years, kind of took him under his wing, and Sparky, in the early days, he was part of Sparky's family. He also worked very closely with Dwayne Mandrusiak. He was part of the Mandrusiak family. Dwayne's he's a legend iconic equipment manager in the CFL for the Eskimos, or whatever you want to call them, the EE team, whatever. But in the Eskimo days, yeah, so Joey worked for the Eskimos as well as the Oilers, and that stuff's fairly, I think, common knowledge. But for my personal view, he used to come and stay with us, especially after I left the training business, because he lived in a residence. But he used to come and stay at our place for a week at a time, or sometimes longer, but on and off. He'd call them sleepovers. And he became part of our family, like, over the 30-some years. And I have so many funny stories to tell you about him. But I just love the little guy, and he was a big part of our life. And you know what? It's just it's so cool that the Oilers are recognizing him on such a large scale. We had they're naming the building that our practice rink that's connected to Rogers Place, the Joey Moss Arena. They had so many beautiful tributes to Joe. It was just fascinating to see, and well deserved. He's an iconic Oiler, and I say at times he's an iconic Canadian, because he represents so many things to so many different people, not only just in the hockey business, but when you talk about diversity in the workforce, you talk about Special Olympics. I mean, Joey was a Special Olympian as well. He played floor hockey for Team Canada. It wasn't that good, but he had lots of fun with him. He did a lot of work for Special Olympics in Edmonton Down Syndrome Society. He Winifred Stewart School, and there's actually a big floor hockey tournament named the Joey Moss Tournament, as well as the Oilers in training camp have a Joey Moss Cup. So anyway, I could go on and on about Joe, but just an iconic Canadian, iconic Oiler, and a close personal friend, and it was a huge loss for us personally, but the city and the NHL, I think.
Yeah, and I know from a Special Olympics perspective, I know Special Olympics Canada posted about him and about his work with the Oilers and with the Eskimos, and then also too, like, about being a Special Olympian and his time as a floor hockey athlete. And you know what, as an athlete myself, it's funny because you always want to try and succeed. I mean, who doesn't in sport? But when he said he wasn't very good at it, I mean, like, no one's really good at a sport. They just get better at something.
Oh, he loved floor hockey. He loved floor hockey. I could say, I didn't want to get into it, but he had a passion for it, and he loved it. But his biggest passion in sports, besides the Oilers, was wrestling. Like, that guy loved wrestling. He knew every professional wrestler. He knew all their names. He watched wrestling nonstop on TV. Eventually, when he got an iPad, one of the players, Ryan, what the heck was his name there? Ryan, one of the young guys years ago, bought him an iPad, and they downloaded a ton of wrestling WWE matches. He used to watch wrestling nonstop. So he loved the wrestling. He was, and we used to have wrestling matches in the dressing room where he would wrestle with the players. We'd have a mock wrestling match. Just funny stuff. If you guys ever get a chance to see, there's a Sportsnet special on Joey Moss, and everybody should get a chance to see that. There's some really cool footage in there with him wrestling. But yeah, just a cool young guy, and he meant so much to so many different people.
No, and he definitely did. And I never got the fortunate pleasure of meeting Joey, but just his impact and message of inclusion just stood alone in the sports world for sure.
Oh yeah.
Now, talking about your kind of career outside of the NHL with the Olympics and the World Cups, you've been to plenty of them. Which event has to be your favorite outside the NHL between those Olympics and the World Cups to have been a part of kind of that time?
Yeah, I'll tell you, with winning comes good things. And as the Oilers were winning, and people maybe not think about this, but as we were winning in the early 80s, those were the years when the World Cups were starting, or excuse me, the Canada Cups were called. That's what they called it to begin with, 85, 94, 87, 91 Canada Cups. And because the Oilers had won, Glenn Sather was the boss. He kind of ran it. We as a staff got to go, and a lot of our Oiler players played in those events. So I think at one point I counted 8 different major international tournaments, including the Canada Cup starting in the early 80s. And then I was fortunate to work in a World Championship in Bolzano, Italy, of all places, which Canada had won, which was fantastic. That was in Italy. And then the World Cups, three World Cup of hockeys, which were between Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. The most exciting, and although they're all exciting, don't get me wrong, especially when you're winning. That World Championship in Italy was one of the most exciting teams that I'd ever played on, or not played on, but were part of it. Were representing your country. I was fortunate to be part of that team, but it was just an exciting event. But bar none, I'd have to say the Olympic Games really was something special. Just because of the history of the Olympics, and to be part of the Olympic program, representing your country. In most cases, Team Canada, which was run by Bob Nick. Well, first of all, Alan Eagleson, and then after Alan Eagleson left, Bob Nicholson took over, who is our chairman, president. He runs the company here. So Bob ran it for quite a long time, and now Tom Rennie is running the national program. But what I was getting at is we were always treated first class. Like wherever we went, whether we were in Europe or across Canada, the U.S., first class. And the 02 Olympics, Wayne Gretzky was the managing director. He kind of looked after things. That was in Salt Lake City, so we went down to Salt Lake, and that was my first Olympic Games, and Canada won in the 02 Olympics. It was just fantastic. It was unbelievable. What an experience that was. And then in 06, we went to Torino, Italy. And typically what happens if you win, they usually pick the same staff, the coaches and managers, and then they'll pick the players. But so I was lucky to go to Torino as well. And that was a bit of a disaster. I think I still have post-traumatic stress disorder from that. Our team just didn't get going, and we couldn't, we didn't even make we passed the preliminary round, but we didn't do very well. Anyway, to answer your question, of all the great events that I was fortunate to be part of, the Olympic Games, I think were very, very special.
Yeah, I mean, you get to represent on like a team that on the biggest sports stage in the world. So, I mean, that's just to get there and kind of be part of it is one thing, and then obviously to see the action live is another aspect too, right?
Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it was fabulous. Living in the village and all the things that you dream about or you've heard about that you wanted to, learn and understand about all the different countries that are participating, and just being part of the Olympic Village was a great experience. Rubbing shoulders with all the different countries and learning about all the different food and yeah, I must admit it's a little more challenging as far as staff is concerned. Some differences for the players too because of ice size and that, but and the routines are a little bit different for the players. But the one thing that we noticed quickly, our staff noticed quickly, is there's very credentials are really hard to get a hold of, and there's only so many credentials that go around, so your staff is cut down. So you're working on a bare bones staff. One equipment manager, one medical trainer. Maybe there was 2, I can't remember exactly, but there was no support staff, like locker room attendants and stick boys and, all those things that you take for granted in the National Hockey League when you're working in day to day. You always have a lot of help and support when you're traveling, and even at home, you have extra staff helping out. But when you go to the Olympic Games, man, you get back down to grassroots. You learn where the fundamentals are. Like you're filling water bottles and you're putting towels out, and you're just doing things that you're not used to doing because you have so many people helping out. But no, it was nothing but great memories about the Olympics.
That's wonderful. Now, I like to end off every episode with a segment I call Words of Wisdom. And you've had so many experiences throughout your career, from, like you said, working the WHL to the CHL onto the NHL, and just kind of being tossed into that fire and trial by fire. What advice would you want to give to someone that may want to start a career in sport and do something like work behind the bench and work behind the scenes on helping the team to succeed furthermore?
Well, I mean, it's this vocation. It's not for everybody. Like hard work is the answer in any walk of life that you choose to be successful. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to never stop learning. I mean, it's always a learning. Things evolve all the time in whatever career you get into. But I think the biggest thing besides the fundamentals of hard work and learning and constant learning and those things are that you really need to learn to be a team player. You really need to learn what the fundamentals of high performance teams are, and just being able to contribute, being able to, be positive. Like the characteristics of, or the traits of character are key. And I mean, off the top of my head, I'm just want to say number one is, and this applies to any career, but especially the hockey business, because that's what I'm familiar with. But, you always have to put the team first. You have to have a team first attitude. The name on the front of sweater is more important than the name on the back. It's a cliche, but it's true. And the people that put the team first will always do better. You have to have a no quit attitude. Never quit, man. Like you're going to get knocked down, and it doesn't matter what you're doing in your life. You got to get up and you can't quit. That's, that's what's going to help make people successful. The other, I think right off the top of my head, I would say, you got to learn not to play the blame game. It's one of the key things in any vocation or anyone's life is you need to learn how to take responsibility. And that especially goes for, well, it works for the trainers, coaches, everybody, but you need to take responsibility and stand up for yourself and just have pride in the job that you do. I remember Glenn Sather. I'll just finish with a little story if you have time. But
yeah, of course.
I just thought about this. I was working at West Edmonton Mall. We used to practice at the mall, and lots of players around, lots of people. It was a very friendly atmosphere, and I was standing by the bench, and a young guy came up to me and he said, I must have been in my first year, I think, or probably first year, second year, came up to me and said, could I have your autograph, please? And I kind of went, no, you don't want my autograph. You want, Gretzky's autograph or Messier's autograph. You don't want my autograph. And in about 2 seconds, I felt a strong tap on my shoulder, and I turned around. It was Glenn Sather. And I had said to the kid, you don't want my autograph. I'm just the trainer. You want the players' autographs. And Glenn Sather said to me, listen here, I don't want to ever hear you say you're just the trainer. You're the trainer of the goddamn Edmonton Oilers. And that's something you should always be proud of. And I'll never forget that. It's just the way that Glenn was with as a leader with the staff and the people. And that's a fundamental that helped me grow as a person, grow as a professional, that, I learned from a young age to stand up for myself and be proud of the work that I did. So, all those things I learned through, the school of hard knocks. And I think anybody else can learn those things too.
That's fantastic. And yeah, honestly, and Glenn's so right. It's, you never want to hear, or you never want to think of yourself as, oh, I'm just the trainer. I'm just the assistant. I'm just this. You are a team. There is no I in team, and you have that team mentality first, or that team, like all four team kind of aspect. And yeah, like no matter what, you could be the smallest nook in the cranny, and as you're part of the team regardless. So.
Well, I was fortunate that I grew up with under a culture of winning that was established very early through Glenn Sather and John Muckler and Teddy Green and the staff that worked there, and of course all the players. I mean, they were all just awesome. I learned very quickly. They become a teammate fairly soon. They're all there to help you. And I always say that people say, well, Wayne Gretzky's a great player, or Mark Messier, or Paul Coffey, Anderson, any of those guys that played. They were all great players, but they were equally great people, and that's what made the Oilers the success that they were, because they had really good people. They were brought up well. They had good parents, and I just, like I said, I came along at a great time, and I was a very lucky guy, and I am a lucky guy today still.
That's great. Barrie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show, share your experiences throughout your Oilers career and what it was like to work with so many great players, work with the great, iconic Joey Moss, and where you are today. So thank you so much, and all the best with the next journey, if you will, in your career.
Well, Ryan, it's been my pleasure, and anytime I get introduced to somebody through a good friend, that Lorraine Mercier, I worked with many years or a few years actually, with the Oilers alumni. She's a great young lady, started her own sports marketing company, and she's a friend of yours, then you're a friend of mine, and I spend a lot of my time helping out with charities now in Edmonton, and very happy to do that. And we have an event called the Toast of the Town coming up, where we're honoring my good friend Kevin Lowe in the end of July, and the Oilers are helping us out. They're going to be a big part of that. So the money's going towards trying to find a cure for multiple myeloma and many other cancers. So that keeps me busy, keeps me going, and it keeps me working on teams and being part of teams that are all like-minded people and trying to make a difference in the world.
That's awesome. Keep up the great work, man. That's incredible to hear. Like, I know how much fundraising is a pain in the ass, because I do it for my sports, and to try and run events, it's always so hard. But that's, honestly, man, that's fantastic. And kudos to you for wanting to make that difference and be a movement maker in your own right.
No worries, buddy. Life is short. You know what? You gotta be happy and have fun. So thanks very much, Ryan, and good luck to you, and keep up the good work, and I'll look forward to catching up with you down the road sometime.
Sounds good. We'll talk soon.
Maybe a golf game.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Okay, buddy. Take care.
Great.
No. Pretty Carolina.